Okay, I'm Tom Crans, Assistant Administrator at NIP. This is my metaphor for NIP. Basically, NIP is a wheeled city. We travel around the landscape visiting stationary cities and building big, new, impressive buildings to go into their stationary cities.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm one of the co-founders of New Information Paradigms. This is a metaphor I put together for our company. As you can see, there's a mountain stream meant to be the kind of the ideas that people get, and you can see there's some little bits joining in here. These are our partners or our customers, people we work with.
NIP employees are used to approaching problems using both verbal and visual metaphors. But it wasn't always like that.
I was approached by a director who said what we want to do is to be able to build group metaphors so that we have a common understanding of who we are and we can effectively explain that to other people. I was very excited about doing this work. But coming down here, I thought, this is an all-male company with marketers and programmers, and I was concerned when I first arrived because I'm younger than most of the people here. I'm certainly young to be coming into a company as a consultant. I'm pregnant, so they've watched since October. They've watched me get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I kept thinking, what are they going to think I am? What are they going to make of this stuff that I do, which is fairly nuts? And getting them to make images, getting them to draw things. I've got this huge box of crayons for them to draw the metaphors. What are they going to think of me?
For me, it was. Initially it was like, oh, cool, we get to play with crayons at work.
But when I was first presented this, I thought of it as just about abject horror, because the idea of having to draw strange diagrams that don't really mean anything seemed too remote and too unattached to what I do. I was really quite surprised when I got into it, how easy it is.
I'd say probably by about my 6th day here, then what I found was that most people, I'd say by then 80% of the members of the company, found it a very useful tool. And what was great for me was that they were finding uses for it that I had no idea were going to happen.
Today they're going to develop a group metaphor. They need to be able to explain simply to their customers the complex technical implications of choosing between two different IT operating systems. One system is currently perceived as the safe mainstream option, but may have some disadvantages. The other system is less well known, but NIP would like their customers to consider using it.
Side of it is that's from a technical thing. We might be that we choose to put in something that's concerning the sort of technology versus the marketing.
The group starts with a general, fairly technical discussion of the issue. Gradually, the language becomes more figurative, as ideas for metaphors get thrown in and are weighed up by the group.
Let's just try and have a review of some of the words that have been thrown up to see if this is talking about. We've said about David and Goliath. We've said about the getting sucked into something.
And finally, someone comes up with a metaphor that can encompass everyone's thoughts so far.
One of two cities. One of the cities is very inviting on the outside. Lots of people live there. There's a very organised central government. Once you actually move in, you find it's like a really bad neighbourhood. The buildings are run down, they look nice on the outside, but you get in and, the lifts aren't
like
working.
Communism or something. Everyone thinks they want to live there and there's lots of propaganda, it's all very nice and so on. But the reality of it is the buildings are falling down, nothing's been maintained in ages. Yeah.
And the other city tends to be a fairly open plan sort of place. It may be more plain, it may be not as attractive, but once you get there, you see that it's actually quite a nice place to live. There are parks, there are trees, there's a city hall where you can go in and just discuss issues with all the other residents. There's no real council or anything like that. And that, for me, provides the elements of, safety in one city because there's a central body that's in control and everyone knows their place. And the other one can be quite a frightening place to live for some people simply because, if their rubbish doesn't get taken away, they've got no one to shout at. They have to take it away themselves.
Well, let's check. Is anybody, hearing what Tom said, is there any aspect of what we've been speaking about or that comes up that isn't quite covered by that, or some other alternative to way of looking at it from two cities?
When everyone's satisfied with the scope of the chosen metaphor, it's time to start drawing or mapping it.
That city, very impressive, very big buildings, but it's always overcast, it's always rainy, and when you get down to the street level, it's a bit of a mess, basically. That's this city. The other one, not so impressive buildings, they're all quite small. You might look at it and go, wow, it's a bit of a naff place to live, really. Lots of small buildings. There's a sort of meeting hall in there where there's very noisy meetings where people get together.
They've said that their meetings are shorter, that they arrive at a common understanding quicker. For example, if they get together and they want to make a project, they want to decide whether or not to go ahead with a project, they find a metaphor for it, and then they check in between each other and the metaphor. Do we all think the same sort of information's here? And that's very much why mapping the metaphors is so important. For example, if there's 5 people and have all been talking about a metaphor, and then one of them goes off and maps it, if for 2 people that absolutely doesn't fit, then it's another way of checking in that the information's shared.
Okay, you mentioned about the rain. It would help me to see the weather in these 2 cities, because it's missing from the diagrams at the moment, but this whole idea of it being dark and overcast and rainy. So it would help if, from my point of view of seeing what we're speaking about here, if there was weather on the diagrams.
Okay. Okay. These.
And another one is, having it done 2-dimensionally is another perspective on the information, so that, again, stuff can just pop out of it. And many's the time once they've drawn it up and they go, well, hang on a minute, there's a river here. How do people get across the river? And they go, there it is, there's the problem.
What about if people were up in the mountains and coming down for some reason,
And
they have a choice?
Which city to go to.
Yeah, and it's obvious that there's a crowd of
flows in
unthinking
rather than
people
flows out.
going into this. Yeah, well, people are coming down like this, and there are 2 cities, and they can make a choice, and they're quite close to each other.
The mountain idea has the water flowing in the other direction.
No, didn't have water flowing. No. If I
Right.
I had there are some mountains up here somewhere, and people are coming down the mountain, or coming down from the mountain to go and live in a city.
So nothing to do with the
And
water.
nothing to do with the water, no. And they have a choice about which city they go and live in,
Okay.
or something like that. So,
Yeah.
so you know, can I have orange people? Is that all right?
Yeah. It'll be fun.
Right now I look at that and I go, well, obviously that's dark and that's great. And I want to know, if you're going to explain this to me that there's other things afoot, I want to know how I got bamboozled in the first place.
Okay, well, because what would happen is that when you come down from the mountains, you don't see the lemmings falling off the other side, for example.
What lemmings?
We haven't got any lemmings.
Get your lemmings in there.
Got no lemmings right now.
Can we have some lemmings, Tom?
Where do you want your
How
lemmings?
do you want to visualise that?
I was going to say.
Well, we have a cliff and people falling off, but it's not.
But where?
Well, for me, to the bottom right, because what's happening is that the people who are approaching the city only see the big city. It's not until they get there they see what it's like to live in, and the consequences of the road that they're taking will lead them to the other side and off the cliff.
So, the bottom right of the dark city, there's a cliff with a pile of bodies or whatever.
So you're looking at something sort of there. Let's give a sort of sense of it being a cliff, really.
Yeah.
A bottomless cliff. And
At the end of the session, Caitlin asked the group how they would use their metaphor.
if I walk into a customer site or something and I'm talking to someone at board level, I am a technical person. I will use technical language, and it will bounce off them. It will go over their head. They'll just sit there and go, well, what do I care? You know, give me the bottom business line. But using a metaphor, I can say, you know, what would it feel like? What would happen if you were in that sort of space? And they can use their emotions and really get to the real underlying reasons why something is the way it is.
Or where the
Look at it
solution
far
is,
more objectively.
it's very emotional to them. So taking away the rain clouds could be a really sort of, you know, completely reorganise your department and fire half of them or something. If you said that to them, they'd immediately go, well, I can't do that. But if you say, well, take away the rain clouds, they, well, yeah, no rain clouds, nice and dry, that's good, you know, and then go back into the real world.
They take it out to customers and they use it as a vehicle for explaining to customers vast amounts of technical detail in a way that they can understand. And further from that, they've started then actually using the questions to encourage their customers to create metaphors themselves to help them get information back.
Whatever they say is always very informative, because it's something that points out whether they empathising with this or whether there's some sort of gap. And if there is a gap, they will say it in terms which are profoundly revealing about.
Now, I think that's extraordinary. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect this group to take on the language in such a way that they could then teach other people to do it. I mean, I think that's wonderful that they've taken on like that.
During the feedback session, Caitlin also asked them how it felt to build a shared metaphor.
If someone added modification to something I wrote, that will be them sort of correcting me, as it were. Whereas this, we all pile in together and build the city together, as it were, and that's a more constructive and quicker.
For me, it engages at a level where you start to understand the important attributes that aren't described if you just choose words finally. And so the whole thing takes on some sort of shared space about what you're talking about.
It's a shared area where we can all contribute, and nobody feels defensive about it, and we all feel we can add to it.